All right, well, hello. My name is Richard Barnett. They've given me 40 minutes. You would get so bored if I talk for 40 minutes. So we'll crack into a little bit about me and about the course and about what it means to be a product manager and get some of my thoughts around it, if that's of interest to you. And I'm going to leave a lot of time for questions and answers if you have any, and then we can talk offline if you don't want to raise your question in front of everybody. So when I first signed up for this several months ago, I was a head of digital product strategy at Goldman Sachs, and I'll talk to you about my background. But more recently I've decided to go it alone a little bit. Got a lot of experience, and so I'm actually working at a startup called VoxSmart. They do voice and instant messaging compliance, and I'm about to start a job helping the RELX Group. It's a big company that has a series of subsidiaries that provide analytical and data capabilities, mostly to the financial markets. And I'm going to help both of those companies with their digital product strategy. So that's why it went from, I don't know if you saw, it went from managing director to former managing director at Goldman Sachs, but it's a nice change. So just to talk to you about what I'm going to speak about here, talk a little bit about who I am, and I'm going to indulge myself a little bit here. I don't like indulgent thinking too much as a product manager, right? But I'd like to tell you a little bit about my journey, because one of the questions I'm going to ask, you don't need to answer it, is product management right for you? And many of you may be in product management and want to become a better product manager, or you might be questioning, like, you know, is it right for me? So maybe we'll touch on some of those things. And what it takes to be successful in product management, in my opinion, it's all subjective, you know. Is it right for you? How I think we can help you as the product school, and I'll go through the agenda of the product management course that was mentioned at the beginning, and then you can ask me any questions that you've got. Hopefully what I won't be doing is the blah 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 blah, which is very meh. So, talking about me, I've already told you what I'm doing at the moment. My background, and I've got a few years behind me, is I started, and this is in chronological order, I started at Bloomberg, started my career at Bloomberg, and I'll talk you through a little bit about that in a second, because I think it's kind of interesting for you to reflect on, I hope. I then worked at Thomson Reuters, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, and that brings me up to the present. I returned to the UK after 19 years in New York, where I worked for most of these companies. I moved across there with Bloomberg. And I can tell you a little bit about that journey, and I came back to the UK in September. That's why I'm working in a startup and changing things up a little bit. It's all new to me. So let me take you back a little bit to the late 90s. Who remembers them? None of you? Okay. Oh, but the old fart over there does. I know him. It's all right. I didn't even told myself. She's looking at me like, what did he just say? I know him. He is an old fart. So this is what phones look like. Remember those Miles? I think I had this one here. I think I still have it in a box somewhere at my parents' house. You know, no internet connectivity, no websites on the go, very basic, but it was such a thrill at that time. Technology was really moving on. This is what Amazon looked like. It doesn't look that different, given that that's 20 years ago. That's a 20-year-old image capture of what Amazon looked like. And when you wanted to search the web, you used Yahoo, and that's what Yahoo looked like. So when I first went on the web, this is how you navigated around. You had your categories there, and you typed something in, and you got some probably terrible match. But this is the world that we lived in. Who knows what that is?
Soil?
Yes. Do you know what it's called? Can't hear. It's a Scion organiser. And I just put it up there because in the UK they were very popular 20 years ago. They were a little bit ahead of their time. Fantastic little, what's PDA stand for? They were PDAs, right? Digital assistant, was it? Yeah. And they were absolutely brilliant. They weren't Windows, obviously, because you didn't have the memory in there to be able to put up with it. But it had Word on there, and it had a kind of Excel version on there. Nice little keyboard you could type on the go. And they were one of those companies like Dyson and Apple that really understood hardware design. But I thought I'd throw that in there and see how many of you knew it. But it was a different world. It really was. And I started work at Bloomberg. That's me. I never had any hair, as you can tell. That is 22 years old.
Add some at the sides.
I'd like to blame the light shining on my head for showing my scalp, or blame it on a big party. But no, I've really not had hair for most of my life. And what I was doing at Bloomberg is, as you can see, I was in sales. So what does sales mean at Bloomberg? So Bloomberg is obviously, I'm sure a lot of you know, financial information, right, in the terminal product that they sell to you, software on desktop. And one of the missions of you as a salesperson is to ensure that your clients get the maximum value out of the product. How do I do that as a salesperson? I go in and constantly show you new features and functionality. My goal, my guiding vision is that you extract as much value from that product as possible, right? So that's the vision. It's always good to have a vision to know